Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. I am your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, the Juice, Dave Sadler. On this week's show, we will go over some headlines here in the world of mixed martial arts. We will also recap Bellator 135 and World Series of Fighting 19, and we will also pick the main card fights for UFC Fight Night 63, Chad Mendes versus Ricardo Lamas, this Saturday afternoon from Fairfax, Virginia on Fox Sports 1. Once again, as I said, I am Jim Graham, my co-host. He's right over there, the Juice. How's it going, Dave?
Doing good. Got my workout in. Got my shower in. Got my water, and I'm ready to go. So consider today complete, and it's only 11.
All right, well, let's start off with some MMA news slash WWE news. As for those of you who did not watch WrestleMania this past Sunday, a surprise guest, as usual, shows up for WrestleMania, but this time it was UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion Ronda Rousey. And not only did she appear in the crowd, she watched the event, but she actually got to go over the barricade, into the ring, team up with The Rock to take on Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. And a lot of people were abuzz about Ronda doing this, and a lot of people liked it. I haven't heard one person that said they didn't like it. Great. Now, I don't know if the UFC knew about this. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. As far as I know, Dana and Vince have somewhat of a mutual respect for each other. So I really highly doubt Dana would say no if it came to him. Hey, can Ronda come in the ring? I doubt he would say no. It's great crossover and great publicity for his company, so I doubt he would say no. But whether it was planned, unplanned, I don't know. It was great. Great for the WWE, obviously. I think great for the UFC, and seemed like a lot of people enjoyed it.
Yeah, everybody seems to have enjoyed it. I guess the crossover was there. For those people who were at my house, I didn't really care for it. I understand why she was in the ring. I get it that she's on on the highest of highs. Millions of dollars, making movies, all that kind of stuff. A couple of things that I was happy that it happened. Ooh, wow, super exciting. Yada, yada, yada. Here's a couple of ifs. What if that hip toss goes bad? Then what happens? The reason she was in the cage is because Fast and Furious 7 comes out, Friday? And The Rock was in the movie as well. I mean, that's why she was there. They were there as kind of a promotion thing for the movie. Never once does it even get mentioned. You know what I mean? And then the third thing was, it's funny that Ronda Rousey, like I said, I'm in complete agreement. She's way up here, everybody else is down here. But it's strange to me that Ronda Rousey can go into WrestleMania, get into the ring, perform in the ring, whether it's just a hip toss or whatever, but a quote-unquote regular UFC fighter technically isn't even allowed to teach a class at the UFC-owned gym to promote themselves. You know what I mean? Ronda can do this on another pay-per-view platform, no questions asked. These guys who are trying to make names for themselves, these lower-tiered guys, aren't even allowed to go into a UFC-owned property and make money. So I guess more of my complaints are from a business point of view than a fan perspective.
Well, what we don't know is whether or not she got paid to do that.
Would you have done it without getting paid?
Be in WrestleMania? Absolutely. But that's me. I mean, I'm not Ronda Rousey. That's the thing we don't know. If Vince McMahon legitimately came up to her, well, I doubt. Maybe he called her, his office called her, whatever, and said, hey, we'll give you a free ticket to WrestleMania. Would you come in the ring and maybe do a hip toss? Okay. You know, it doesn't mean she had to get paid. So if she didn't get paid, does that matter? Does that change your argument then?
No, no, because she's still her brand is now in front of all the millions and millions of people who watched it. You know what I mean? I read an art. Our friend Steve Muehlhausen from the Sporting News, he wrote something. There was like 31 million searches for Ronda Rousey, something like that. So, on Google, that's pretty impressive.
Right, but I mean, if the sole thing wasn't getting money and it was just something that they offered her and she said yes and the UFC didn't have a problem with it, I don't see too much of a problem with it. Now, I get your point about having, lower level fighters teaching class at a UFC gym. That stuff has to be changed. But to me, if she wasn't getting paid for this appearance, then I don't know. I doubt very many people would say no to that opportunity, is what I'm saying. You can ask any UFC fighter if they're like, hey, we're going to have you go. You're not going to get paid, but you're going to go in WrestleMania and, hang out with The Rock and Triple H and guys like that. You get a free ticket to the show or something. Okay. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Who's passing up that opportunity? I don't think
Right.
you can blame Ronda Rousey whether she was getting paid or not. Because obviously, you just said all the searches and stuff, people were buzzed. To me, that's almost payment in itself.
Right. It says I was wrong. 1 million searches for WrestleMania 31, plus another 100,000 for Ronda Rousey.
That's just within the night that it happened.
It doesn't have any. It doesn't have any qualifying.
Well, I would imagine that obviously no one knew this was going to happen, so it has to be Sunday night into Monday morning.
Right.
There's no way that's getting that many searches beforehand, especially when she has a scheduled fight, but it's not like it's coming up or anything that soon.
Right. Yep.
So, anyways, it was cool.
Hey, speaking of searches and stuff, now would be a great time to remind people that I'm on Twitter at Vigilante Juice, and that Jim has like 7 times the followers that I do.
Well,
How's that for a plug?
yeah, I always plug everyone's Twitter, so
Yeah, but
don't blame me for
how does
having
Jim have
more.
800? When clearly, I don't know if you noticed this, but been working out.
Oh man, that's probably why right there.
Yeah. I went to a Muay Thai class on Monday at MMA Team Genesis. How about that?
Wow, that's cool. Is that your first official Muay Thai class, or you had done that before?
No, that was my first official Muay Thai class.
Oh, wait till you start getting kicked in the thighs. That's fun.
Well,
That was fun when I
I
did.
won't have another Monday off until the middle of April, so I won't get to go back.
Well, that
But
might be a good thing because I think that's probably the next class.
yeah, yeah. But no, it was cool. Anybody that's local to my area, you should definitely check out a class. I think I did like 200 every like I held the bag. Mrs. Ebersol is here in town, and I had to hold the bag for her, and then she held it for me. So every time she did her set, when we were done, we had to set it down and do 10 push-ups and 10 crunches, and then we had to, we switched. We ended up at one point we had to do 50 push-ups and 50 crunches, and right after we did arms at the gym, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die in Muay Thai class.
All right, well, let's change gears here a little bit. Dave, you brought this article to my attention. It is on MMAsucka.com, and they wrote an article titled, "No, Thiago Silva getting knocked out was not a great moment for the sport." And this is interesting because it kind of plays off a tweet from a guy who used to write for MMA Sucker, that being Adam Martin, and we've had him on the show as well. It's MMA. It's kind of like a play on his name, so it's Adam Martin on Twitter, and he tweeted right after. For those of you who don't know, we'll also transition to our World Series of Fighting 19 coverage. Someone please send me a GIF of Thiago Silva getting knocked out. Great moment for the sport. So that is what he sent after Thiago Silva lost this past weekend at World Series of Fighting 19, and basically MMA Sucka kind of took that and wrote an article basically discrediting it, which is interesting because, like I said, he used to write for this website, and I don't know if it's a great moment for the sport, but I wouldn't say that it wasn't good for the sport. I will say that because someone got hurt. That someone is Matt Hamill. And for those of you who like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast, we posted a statement from Matt Hamill's Facebook page, listing what happened and why that he couldn't fight for World Series of Fighting 19. He was sick. He had, I believe it was an infection, and the doctors said, we can't let you fight. He was trying his hardest to fight, and it just wasn't going to happen. So with that, the World Series of Fighting had some reserve fighters. This was part of their light heavyweight tournament, a 4-man light heavyweight tournament. So with that not happening, Hamill against Thiago Silva, they had to move somebody up from one of those reserve bouts, and that ended up being Teddy Holder. And so Teddy Holder comes in on less than 24 hours' notice to take on the best guy he's ever fought in his career, and ends up knocking out Thiago Silva. Now, this kind of reminds me, Dave, maybe not as high profile, but it kind of reminds me when Ken Shamrock got hurt years and years ago, and they had Seth Petrozelli step in to face Kimbo Slice in the main event of that Elite XC card. And we all know what happened there. Petrozelli knocks out Kimbo Slice, kind of signals the end of Elite XC, more or less. There were some other reasons, but that kind of ended up being the big blow there that Elite XC led to folding. And I don't think this moment will lead the World Series of Fighting to fold. I'm not sure what other options the World Series of Fighting had. So I don't know how you can call it a horrible moment. I mean, this guy comes up, knocks him out. I mean, that was a great fight, Dave. For all like 3 minutes it lasted, both guys had their opportunities to win this fight. I mean, Silva had Holder rocked, and obviously Holder had Silva rocked. So, and that's Silva's style, is to be aggressive and bang. So he got exactly the fight that he wanted to. In fact, you can make a case that he had a better chance to win, even taking on a guy less than 24 hours notice than he had against Matt Hamill, who obviously was a tremendous collegiate wrestler and would implement more of that style to stifle the striking and power of Thiago Silva. So if anything, you would say it was an easier fight stylistically for him, or a better matchup stylistically. So to sit there and say, no, it wasn't a great moment for the sport, I think is wrong. I don't think it will go down in history as a greatest moment in MMA or anything, but I wouldn't discount its merits. I think it was a good moment for the sport. I mean, anytime you see a guy coming out of nowhere to take out a name in the sport like that in that fashion, I think is good. People like upsets. People like the underdog.
Yep. First of all, I think the fight was a good fight. It's a fight that, especially day of, I mean, think of all the work that Thiago Silva put in thinking he was going to be fighting a wrestler, and then to find out he's going to be standing and banging. I mean, it's got to be a little bit of a relief that you're not going to get grinded for 3 rounds. But, it sets up for him for the perfect fight, and he just got caught. And when you have that kind of style of fighting, you're either going to get caught or you're going to catch somebody. Very rarely do his fights go to decision. But to transition away from World Series of Fighting for a minute, and we should also say, Jim, that MMA Sucka used to put our show on their website. They no longer do that. We just because don't really do it anymore. But what I don't like about the fact that Adam Martin's a pretty respected guy, respected journalist, when it comes to MMA, he sent out a tweet about a fight. Had he been drinking? Was it him just being funny? We don't know. But to take what somebody tweets out and turn it into a whole story is what I don't like. And the fact that he used to write for somebody, that's what I don't like. You see some of these guys, you hear me talk about them constantly, Jim, that front row Brian that's on Twitter. This guy puts idiotic thing after idiotic thing on Twitter, and nobody calls him out on it. Not one person. Adam Martin does lots of great work. He covers every event. He's always writing something. And you want to base an entire article. If you're going to do that, then you should be writing all sorts of articles, because there's lots of people who tweet lots of dumb things about MMA.
Now, the only thing we don't know is whether or not. Let me see who wrote the article for the website. Let's see if I can
Mike
pull
Fagan.
that up. Now, he was not part of the website when you and I were doing stuff with them, so he's obviously a new addition. Now, I wonder if this Mike Fagan actually contacted Adam and said, hey, your point of view is valid. I disagree. Would it be okay if I mention your tweet in an article kind of opposing your view?
Right.
I'm Adam as a professional. We don't know if that happened. If it did, then okay, fair enough. You kind of let them know, like, hey, that's your point of view. This is my point of view. Is it okay if I mention you in an article? That's how I would have approached it as a writer. But I don't know if this guy did. And if he didn't, that to me would be wrong. Because I don't want to say slander or libel, but you know what I mean. I think you're not allowing him to defend himself, kind of, sort of. Yeah. And you're putting him on blast a little bit. Like I said, a respected journalist, a guy who has done work for your site before, a guy that, believe it or not, is either in the process or has finished writing the biography of Carlos Newton. I mean, this guy's up there. You know what I mean? He's not front row Brian, just some guy saying idiotic tweets, just to hear himself talk.
Right.
This is a guy we've even had him on our show. He's a good guy. So I guess maybe we're a little biased. We don't want to see someone we respect and can call a media friend, but yeah, I think this article was a little in poor taste, and I will side more towards Adam in this case, and saying, I maybe want to go as far as a great moment, but it definitely was not a bad moment or something that is not however you want to phrase that.
Right.
All right. Well, that transitions perfectly for us to the rest of World Series of Fighting 19, which, again, Dave, we were not giving it much thought other than the top two fights, but I would say for a 4-fight main card for World Series of Fighting, I think this could be arguably the best card they've ever had. I mean, in terms of quality of fights from top to bottom. This was great. The first fight was really solid. Clifford Starks and Jay Kuhn. Clifford Starks ended up getting an arm triangle choke. Then you had Tamir Valioff, and he just blasted right through Ed West in a minute 39, knocking out the former Bellator bantamweight. Then, of course, you had the guy less than 24 hours notice, biggest fight of his career. He knocks out Thiago Silva in the co-main event. And then another just awesome performance from Justin Gaethje against Luis Palomino. That 3-round fight was, I thought, pretty darn good. I would have gave Gaethje the first, Palomino the second, and then the third. You could tell both were a little tired from that pace, but those leg kicks that I think Gaethje has really been showing off in his last couple fights, that just accumulated. And Palomino, towards the end there, he just couldn't stand. And he knocked him down once from leg kicks, and I thought the referee was going to stop it then, because I thought Palomino can't stand. Let him back up. Gaethje hit him with another leg kick about a minute later, and then threw some more on the ground. And you could tell Gaethje's like, all right, if I can just do one flurry here, this fight's going to be ended. And you could tell he just went for it all in that last 15 seconds, and the referee came in and stopped it at the 3:57 marker in round 3 for Gaethje to stay the World Series of Fighting lightweight champion and stay undefeated in his career at 14-0. And this kid, Dave, just continues to impress. Every person that World Series of Fighting has put in front of him, he has beat, and he has beat handily. He has come out the victor. And I don't know what his contract situation's like. I don't know how much he loves fighting for the World Series of Fighting. I don't know stuff like that. But I will tell you that I don't think he has to have too many more fights before he gets a call up to another organization. And that organization I'm speaking about is the UFC. I think this kid is poised for greatness. He has all the intangibles. He has heart, determination, skill, work ethic, and he can go in there with anyone. He has a great style, and he has a lot of skills I think he hasn't even really shown yet. This guy was an All-American wrestler. When was the last time we really seen him try to out-wrestle anybody? You know, I mean, that's a skill that I feel like he has in his back pocket. It's just he's been so good and his stand-up game has developed so well, he hasn't even used it. And that's what's the scary thing about Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, just gets better, and he's got all. I mean, he's got all the tools. So no, he continues to be on a roll. I don't think he'll stick around the World Series of Fighting Decagon. I don't think he'll stay around very much longer. One thing I wanted to get your opinion on. I don't know if you saw this, but on the undercard, Eric Reagan, a 40-fight. I'm reading off of SureDog, a 40-fight pro who lost for his 8th time in 9 bouts at World Series of Fighting 19. His medical suspension was listed as this. It has been recommended to quote-unquote stop competing by the Arizona MMA and Boxing Commission following his second-round knockout loss. Just a little bit of back. It says, a long-time Rage in the Cage vet, Reagan was battered by Matthew in a lopsided opening stanza before a left high kick knocked the Arizonian out cold to end a welterweight contest 14 seconds into round 2. 4th loss via knockout or TKO since his career began in 2006. So the medical board advised him to retire.
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't say the knockouts are what it is. I mean, he's fought 40 times in his career. He's only been knocked out 4 times. That's not a high rate. And of recent memory, he's only been knocked out twice in the last 5 years.
Right.
So he doesn't really have a history of getting knocked out. He has a history of losing because his career record is 15-25. If anything, he should retire because he's 15-25, not because he got knocked out.
Right. I mean, I think it's weird that they would. I mean, that they would say stop competing. You know, it's crazy. There's a couple things that are crazy. He got on the World Series of Fighting being 15-24. And they paid him $750. That's brutal.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you're only getting paid $750 and you're 10 fights under 500, maybe it's time to hang. You know, I think that the ship of getting to a higher level may have sailed.
I agree.
All right, well, let's transition to the other fight that was this weekend, Bellator 135. And Dave, that was also a great fight, as we saw another great card. Started off with Ryan Couture as he took on Dakota Cochran, and that was another, I think, good performance by Ryan Couture. Obviously, I think Dakota Cochran's a little better than his last opponent that he fought in Bellator, but nonetheless, he submitted him in the first round. And this was a fight, Dave, just real quickly looking at. If you're Dakota Cochran, knowing that this is what Ryan Couture likes to do, get on the ground and try to submit people, why on earth, when Ryan Couture got done taking you down, would you then yourself keep pressing for the takedown? It threw me off completely, because I would have said Dakota Cochran was easily the better stand-up fighter. And he kind of pushed for the takedown a little bit there. What happens? Couture reverses the position, gets in good position, and submits you. That was just a horrible game plan by Dakota Cochran. You played right into the hands of Couture in that one.
Yeah, I think they even bring it up in the broadcast that, like, I'm not sure. I think Jimmy, is that his name? Yeah, Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy Smith. Yeah.
Are you sure that's the best plan right there? I think coming into this fight, Dakota Cochran has has fought better competition than Couture, if I'm not mistaken.
In Bellator, yes, I would say so.
But I mean, I think this was a good test just for one of them to make that next step up. But yeah, going to the ground, probably not the best game plan. Now you walk out with a submission loss, and for Couture, hey, you got the fight where you needed it to be, and you walk out with a submission victory. So, you know, he knew that if he stays standing, he was going to be in trouble, and you know, Couture got away with not having to stand, and he'll go back. It's just something he needs to work on.
All right, now this to me, along with the Gaethje Palomino fight, I think very rarely do you see this on one weekend, Dave, but I think we have two fights we can consider finalists for Fight of the Year, and we saw them in the same weekend with Palomino and Gaethje, and we saw this great fight at featherweight between L.C. Davis and Hiteo Couture, and boy, just what an effort by both men. And I know a lot of people know Tokoro is exciting. You know, we talked about his long history in Japanese MMA, but L.C. Davis is a guy not known for being exciting. If you go back in his Bellator days and in his WC days, he's kind of been a more technical, kind of grappling-based guy. He hasn't had that many exciting fights. So I thought there could be a chance that L.C. Davis could turn this, into a boring fight. But L.C. Davis, I think, was maybe fueled by what Tokoro was doing, flying around, trying submissions crazy, throwing crazy punches. And I think that maybe fueled him like, all right, I got to throw some stuff here. I can't just, grind this guy out. And I think that helped L.C. Davis. And I thought we saw that's the best L.C. Davis I've ever seen in my life. I thought he looked tremendous. Had a great jab, had a great power right hand, had some good takedowns, good ground and pound, good submission defense. Tokoro was doing his thing, flying around, going for submissions, landing damage. I mean, this was just a great fight all around. And then you credit how tough was L.C. Davis. He caught that up kick, which, if you look at the replay, was not legal, but still knocked his teeth out. If you see the post-fight interview with Jimmy Smith, you see his mouth all bleeding, his teeth are misaligned. You probably have to go to the dentist. I was like, man, that guy took that shot right to the chin. He kept coming, landing damage, and that fight was a tremendous 15 minutes. And L.C. Davis, this was actually at bantamweight. I think I said featherweight, bantamweight. I don't know if a title shot's next, but I think after that performance, I think a lot of people are kind of jumping on his bandwagon. And for Tokoro, we talked about a guy, maybe towards the end of his career, he showed a lot of life. He looked a lot of spry guy, and hopefully Bellator can bring him back. Because if that's what he's going to bring to the table, win or lose, Dave, that's a guy I think you want on your card.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the best L.C. Davis I've seen. I saw him live, and the guy he was fighting was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and he laid on him for 15 minutes out in Valparaiso. Wasn't the most exciting thing I've ever seen. But, it goes to show you that when these cards come out, you got to DVR them if you're not going to watch them live, because you never know what's just going to pop up. Should this be one of the fights of the year? Think back to last week's show. Should this be one of the greatest fights of the year? No. Just another fight. And that's what I loved about this weekend. 2 fight cards going on, and not a lot of press or thoughts about any of it. And what happens? It delivers. They both cards delivered. All 8 fights that were on the main card were pretty exciting, with the exception of the Francis Carmel fight. But I thought all of them were pretty good.
Now, in the Francis Carmel fight, he got the win. He was pushing forward more. He did land some takedowns. I thought that his opponent, Guilherme Viana, I thought, held his own. I did not think was overmatched, but to be honest, I don't like Carmel at 205. Now, Viana did seem like a little bit of a small light heavyweight, but I thought Carmel was just such a big middleweight that I think moving up to 205, I think he loses some advantage. Now, I just think like him taking on a guy like King Mo's a pretty big light heavyweight. I think that King Mo would beat him pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if this was a one-off thing, just kind of like get a fight in Bellator, maybe get one quick, and then try to cut down. But, looking at Bellator's middleweight division, I think his size, he could easily become their champion. Now, maybe his thought is to just have some fights in Bellator, not fight for the title, try to get back to the UFC. I'm not really sure what his game plan is. Maybe he doesn't care about titles. But plus Bellator's 205 division is not as deep. There aren't as many guys really besides King Mo and I guess Volkov but he's technically still a heavyweight. If he could drop down, then it would be more alluring, but their middleweight division has a lot more guys and a lot more, good matchups for him than I think him fighting at 205 pounds.
Yeah, I was I was unimpressed with Francis Carmel. Like coming from the UFC, I feel like you should have, even if you're coming off of being cut and you're coming off of losses, there should still be a mystique about you, and you need to go out there and prove that. I just came from the best organization and lost to the best guys. He shouldn't be winning split decisions. He should be, if he's going to go to a decision, he should dominate for the full 15 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's easier said than done, but I just feel like that's how it needs to be done.
Especially when you're not cutting weight. He had to
Right.
cut. I don't know how much he walks around at, but he couldn't have had to cut that much to get down to 205. So with that in mind, his conditioning should have been the best it should have been, considering he
Right.
didn't have to dehydrate himself that much. So if anything, we should have saw the best Francis Carmel we've ever seen on Friday night, but we didn't. We saw an average Francis Carmel, and luckily the opponent he was taking on was rather pedestrian, and he got the win.
Yep.
All right, let's get to the main event, Dave. This one I thought could be pretty good. A rematch, Joe Warren and Marcus Galvo. Joe Warren always, whether it's win or lose, he puts a lot of heart and determination to his effort, and sometimes that gets him caught with a submission or a knockout, or maybe gets him in a crazy position. That's usually what happens in a Joe Warren fight. So it's not quite the boring, ground and pound style like some other wrestlers. He definitely tries. He maximizes his output. And for this fight, he got caught. He was in a position with Galvo. Galvo's a good submission guy, and I think he knew this time around that that's Joe Warren's game plan. Unlike the first time, he was kind of new to Bellator and everything, so he thought, all right, this is what I got to work on, trying to catch Joe in a submission. He's vulnerable in that area. He's been submitted a couple times. I think that's the area I got to look out for, and I thought Galvo did that to a T. He was able to roll and get position, grab a leg, and get that leg bar or knee bar, however you want to call it, and made Joe Warren scream, scream in pain, which I think I've seen people, kind of moan, maybe yell a little bit, but not that loud that all the microphones pick it up. And also in that big of an event, a title fight, main event fight, to have something like that go down. So I completely agree with John McCarthy coming and stopping that. If someone yells like that, yeah, you got to stop the fight. If he doesn't, and then it finds out that Joe Warren has serious leg damage and tore tendons and stuff because McCarthy didn't stop it until he tapped, then everyone was like, whoa, why didn't he stop it?
Right.
So John McCarthy had to stop that. I don't care how mad Joe Warren was, that's the right call. When you see a fighter do that, you have to stop it. You just have to. So big credit to Galvo. I'm sure we'll see a Galvo Warren 3 in the future. But for a guy, Dave, we weren't sure if he should get another shot at the title that quickly. He didn't have that many impressive wins after his loss to Eduardo Dantes. But he steps in, gets the victory, and it looks as though Mike Richmond has another fight coming up. It looks like so does Dantes. We mentioned LC Davis. This bantamweight division is shaping up to be pretty stacked here for Bellator. It's shaping up to arguably be their best division.
Yeah. Considering that he's the best in the world, or the whatever he says, the most dangerous man on the planet.
The baddest man on the planet.
Yeah. Him and Ken Shamrock should get together. He's got to know that a verbal submission is a verbal submission. Like him crying in the cage afterward is a little bit ridiculous. You've been fighting how long, and you didn't know that if he was in that same position and Galvo screamed, he would let go of the leg and be like, "Yeah, I won." And lose with class, Joe Warren, and you'll get your rematch. The division's not that big. Lose with class, and you probably could get an immediate rematch if you aren't kind of a jackass,
Right, and like I said, the fact that it's now 1-1 between the two, I'm sure a third will come sometime, whether it's for the title or not. I think a third fight will happen, and for Joe Warren, once again, he can't seem to defend the title, Dave. This is his first official title defense, because the fight against Dantes was technically a unification bout, not a title defense. So he technically didn't defend his title in that fight. He became the official bantamweight champion because he was the interim champion. And so now this was his first title defense, much like when he fought Pat Curran. So just doesn't seem like he can defend that title.
Right. Hey, it's I mean, mentally it's got to be a different ball game. You know you're going to get the best from your opponent, and just like he's won it before, you know, it's different when you have the prize to shoot for, I guess. If hey, I beat this guy, I'm going to make more money. It's a lot different than if I beat this guy, I get to keep making the same amount of money.
All right. Well, before we get to UFC Fight Night 63 this weekend, and we talk about the main card and pick the fights, a little bit of UFC news, and we thought it could be the headline card for the proposed UFC on Fox card in Chicago coming up this summer. Now, it will be a headline fight. It just won't be for that fight. It will be for UFC Fight Night 69, which will take place from Berlin, Germany, on June 20th, and this will be a Fight Pass event. And that event that we were talking about, Dave, or that fight, is Alexander Gustafsson against Glover Teixeira. Now, I thought that could be a perfect either headline or co-main event for the Fox card. UFC thought it was, but just for a different event, as they're going to put the Mauler against Glover Teixeira here in June. I like the matchup. I think it's one of the few matchups you can really book for both these gentlemen coming off of losses, and the winner reasserts themselves into the title picture in the 205 division.
Yeah, it's a good booking. It's an immediate way for one of the two to get right back where they need to be or where they want to be, and yeah, it's a good main event. It's on Fight Pass, so luckily I have Fight Pass for another 4 months for free, so pretty excited about that. Hey. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one of the reasons maybe they put this on the Fight Pass as opposed to the Fox card, this is a really big matchup, and this may sway people who maybe haven't got the Fight Pass already to get it, because this is a big-time fight. It's not a fight that you can kind of just gloss over and go, meh. I think this is a pretty big-time fight, and fighters that people enjoy watching. So I think this is another ploy to try to get people back to the Fight Pass, because the last couple of Fight Pass main events, Dave, haven't been all that great, and cards that you can just most definitely skip over. But I think at least this fight, I don't know what else is going to materialize on the card, but I think at least this fight is going to be a hard one to pass over.
Yeah, the Gonzaga. Oh, excuse me. Oh. The Gonzaga Crow Cop fight is the next one that's on Fight Pass.
Next weekend, right?
Right, and then you got Stipe Hunt is on Fight Pass in May. And, like you said, it could be a way to sway, starting to put a little bit bigger fights on the Fight Pass. So it could be a way to, sway some folks.
All right, well, let's get to this weekend's action, UFC Fight Night 63 from Fairfax, Virginia. Just to let people know, this will start at 1 in the afternoon, with prelims starting at 11 a.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1. You may be thinking, why would they be doing a fight at 1 o'clock? Well, for those of you who don't watch other sports, the Final Four is on Saturday. A lot of people in the 18 to 35 bracket that the UFC tries to get for males, guess what they're going to be doing? Watching the Final Four. So why go head-to-head with the Final Four when you can air a couple hours earlier before the big two basketball games and try to get viewers that way? I think it's sound. Honestly, Dave, I would have pushed the Fight Pass card that you just talked about, the Poland card. I would have had that for this weekend. Would have had this card the following weekend, so you don't have to worry about competing with the Final Four. You can have your normal Saturday time slot and not change times. Because sometimes when you change times, even though people have DVR, they're not actively thinking, oh, I got to DVR something at 1 o'clock.
Right.
When it's something unusual. So I wouldn't be surprised if the ratings for this one aren't great. Just my thoughts.
If they it needs to be promoted like today, tomorrow, and Friday, that it's going to be on at a special time. I don't even know. Is there a NASCAR race on Saturday as well?
They're
Or-
usually on Sunday afternoon, and if they are on Saturday, they're usually Saturday evening. So I
Yeah,
don't. Well, there might be like a nationwide race, but that's like the minor leagues in NASCAR. So I wouldn't say that's that big a
but
deal.
no, I'm just saying it gives people another option, and uh, I think isn't it final preseason baseball games?
Or either first games of the regular season. I'm not sure because
Yeah,
sometimes they do those couple games in Japan or whatever.
right, right. Um, I'm looking here on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday at 7. Oh no, they're off this week. That's weird. Huh? NASCAR's off.
Oh,
That's weird.
well,
Oh
there you
well.
go. So yeah, I'm just saying like maybe they're just trying something new to see if they can do a 1 o'clock time slot because they really haven't done that as far as I can tell in a very very long time.
Well,
So
somebody suggested at the Conor McGruber press conference yesterday that the 1 o'clock time slot is a perfect. The 1 o'clock Eastern time slot fits perfect to when a card would normally run in Dublin, Ireland. And they asked Dana if this is possibly like a test run to see if they can get out, if they can get the event done by like a certain time or whatever, because they want to do that Crow Park and they have a curfew. And Dana says he was like kinda. I don't
well,
know if
I think it has more to do with not competing with the Final Four than it
oh, I
does
do too.
testing out whether or not they can do an event in Ireland. Because this event was planned, they booked this date in November of last year.
Right.
So November last year, they weren't even really thinking about having an event in Ireland.
I agree.
So I mean, it's about a 5 hour difference. And here's the thing: they've run events in the UK before. So how is that? You know what I
I,
mean? Like I
I
don't
hear you. I hear you. I'm just telling you the question that was asked.
the
What
weird
did you
thing.
think of McGoober grabbing the belt yesterday?
I don't know. He'll do anything for attention or to get a rise out of his opponent. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I'm a little surprised, but at the same time, I'm not. That's just what he does. And I'm gonna be honest. I think this world tour thing is a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, people are going to be intrigued by this fight no matter how many cities they stop in and tell people about this fight. What they should be doing is taking Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson on a world tour.
Yeah.
You know, he's arguably the best fighter in this organization, and nobody cares about him.
How about the fact that
You know what I
the
mean? Like those are the guys you should be taking on world tours, not guys people are already going to watch.
how about the fact that they're doing a world tour for the featherweight world championship and the number one contender fight is on free TV in 3 days and there hasn't been but 3 advertisements on TV.
Right, and then you have a great matchup in Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald, and it's getting completely overshadowed.
Yep.
It's an afterthought. Oh, and it has this.
Yep.
So, like a couple different. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited about McGregor Aldo just as much as anybody, but I think I hate to say too much press, but this fight was going to get a lot of pub regardless of what happened. Just the fact that it was McGregor Aldo, you know, the thing with him running out of the cage there in Boston. This was going to be hyped. You know what I mean?
Oh,
There
yeah.
was going to be no shortage of attention on this event. Now, I can understand taking a couple cities, but to go to like what 10 different cities where in April this fight's not till what, June? My
It's no July.
July. So
Yeah.
3 months. We're promoting this fight. That's 3 months. You have how many more big pay-per-views you have in between then?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's a little. I understand they got training camps and stuff, and you want to do it mid-training camp, but a little too soon maybe. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just because I've seen a lot of fights and press and hype, and maybe that's why that sort of stuff doesn't. You know, I don't pay attention to that sort of stuff, but maybe others do. I don't know. I guess we'll see with how many people actually buy the pay-per-view. We'll see if that worked.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, let's get to what's happening this weekend, though. Let's stick here on the present. UFC Fight Night 63. 6 fights will be shown on the main card on Fox Sports 1. The first fight of the evening is at lightweight, as Dustin Poirier will make his first foray in the lightweight division for the UFC as he takes on Diego Ferreira. Looking at Poirier, he is 8-3 in the UFC. As I mentioned, his UFC lightweight debut. His last fight was a loss to Conor McGregor at UFC 178, and 7 of his 16 career victories are by knockout. Looking at Ferreira, he's 2-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a loss to Beneil Dariush at 179, and 6 of his 11 career victories are by submission. Now, the interesting thing to me will the size. How will Poirier deal with the size moving up 10 pounds? Obviously, his condition has always been great at 145, Dave, so I find it hard to believe that he will be out of shape at 155. And also, how will he deal with the power? Obviously, the guys at 55 will be a little more powerful than most of the guys he's dealt with at 45. Now, Ferreira, luckily, is not really like a one-punch knockout guy, so I don't think he should have to worry about there, but he has to worry about the size and strength and the grappling ability of Ferreira. That's what I imagine the difference of this matchup can be. Can Poirier, keep his back off the cage, sprawl and keep his distance, and I think, be a technical striker that we know he can, and outpoint Ferreira. I think that's kind of the strategy here. But I think if it's up and close, I think Ferreira has a pretty big grappling advantage over the Diamond.
Yeah, Poirier's definitely going to have to come out in this fight. He's got something to prove. New weight division. There was a lot of build-up for his last fight, so people are aware of who he is. But Diego's not an easy entrance into the 155-pound division. But like you were saying, I'm interested to see, how does he react to the power? How is his power at 155? How is his cardio at 155? How does a 10-pound heavier Dustin Poirier, is he slow? Is he fast? All these things we don't know. So it's kind of a scary fight for Diego because you know what Poirier did at 145, but you have no clue what may or may not happen at 55.
Very intriguing fight here, and definitely, I think, a good one to kick off the card. Looking at the featherweight fight that is next, Clay Guida will take on Robert Peralta. Looking at Peralta, 4-2 with a no contest in the UFC. His last fight was a loss to Thiago Tavares at the Fight Night in Bangor, Maine, and 13 of his 18 career victories are by knockout. Looking at Guida, 11-9 in the UFC. His last fight was a loss to Dennis Bermudez at Fox 12, and 15 of his 31 career victories are by submission. Well, one of the problems that Robbie Problems Peralta has had in the UFC is dealing with wrestlers. And what is Clay Guida but a tremendous wrestler? I think this has all the makings of Clay Guida being able to take down Peralta no problem and landing some solid ground and pound and getting a decision victory. This is really what it has the makings to me. Now, what will be interesting to see if Peralta can keep it standing at all, because I think if he does, the way Guida has kind of gone in his last couple fights, at least against, you could say, higher competition. I don't know if Peralta's there yet, but he has been finished quite a few times. His last fight against Mendes and Bermudez, he got finished both those times. Now, the Bermudez one, he got submitted, but he got rocked before the submission. So Peralta definitely has that type of power. I mean, 13 knockouts out of 18 victories, that's a high clip. This guy definitely has some power in his hands here at 145. So if he can get a chance to unleash those, I think he could knock out Clay Guida. But if he doesn't have a chance to get room and he can't keep his distance and he can't sprawl, then we're going to see a Clay Guida victory here.
Yeah, this is two guys coming off of losses, Jim, that if they think that they have a title run in them, this is a fight that both of them have to win. Guida left Jackson's on good terms, and I believe he's back here in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe he's at Team Alpha Male for this one. I think it's Alpha Male.
He definitely switched camps. He is definitely not at Jackson's anymore. That I know for sure.
Yeah, I think he's at Alpha Male. I'm not exactly sure, but Guida needs to get back to Guida. To what he did to be successful early on in his career. He hasn't done that, and he didn't leave Jackson's because of a disagreement or anything. He just wanted a fresher look. And we've talked about that before with other guys. That sometimes you just need to not be at the same place for 50 years. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see what his new camp has taught Guida, or maybe not taught, but maybe reopened is a good way of saying it. Uh, anything that could reignite Guida, perhaps. This is kind of like the Poirier fight. You know what you're going to get from Guida from his time when he was at Jackson's camp. You kind of know what Clay Guida you're going to get. But what is Peralta preparing for against this Guida? Guida's got a mixed bag of tricks, and what is there that Peralta can drill? There's no other Clay Guida.
Right, and just to clarify, he has, since leaving Jackson's, an article here on Fox Sports, he has done some training mostly in the whole state of California. He was at Systems Training Center in Southern California. Then he did some training at the Glendale Fighting Club, which of course is headed up by Ronda Rousey there. And really to kind of finish off in the main part of his camp was Team Alpha Male, as you mentioned, Dave, with Uriah Faber and Chad Mendes, as Faber and Mendes had been asking him to come out there for years to train. So he finally kind of took them up on that offer. So that's kind of what he's been doing since leaving Jackson. So all those places I think are great places to to get some new blood and some different techniques and stuff. So whether he continues at any of those camps, I don't know, but I think if you're going to switch from Jackson's, I would say those are pretty viable replacements.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, the next fight of the evening, I think I'm excited for the main event, don't get me wrong, but I think I'm really intrigued by this fight right here at the women's bantamweight division, Juliana Pena against Melita Duvea. And of course, Juliana Pena is the first ever female to win a season of the Ultimate Fighter, so just 1-0 in her UFC career when she won the Ultimate Fighter against Jessica Rakoczy for the season 18. And just so people know, that was back in November 2013. So it will be about, what is that, like 16 months, I think, right? About a 16-month layoff, and of course she tore her ACL in that 16 months. It's not just like she's been sitting around or anything. She had a serious injury, so first fight post-injury and first fight in a very long time for her. 5-2 in her career, and 3 of those 5 victories are by submission. Looking at Duvea, she is just 1-0 in the UFC as well. Her last fight, she defeated Elizabeth Phillips at the Fight Night in Macau, China, and 6 of her 11 career victories are by submission. Reason I'm intrigued is because I thought Juliana Pena, coming off that victory in the show and doing what she did, I thought could be a star for this division. Obviously, a very serious ACL injury has derailed her. Obviously, been out 16 months. This is her first fight back. I don't know a lot about Duvea. Obviously, she has a victory in the UFC, 11 career victories, I believe 11-3 overall, if I'm not mistaken. I think a solid person for her to test her skills got. And the interesting thing to me will be how will that knee react? How will she be able to move around? Where she still kind of have that explosiveness in her takedowns that we saw when she had on the show, Dave. And I wonder if that knee has affected her conditioning at all, because a lot of fighters use running techniques to build up their conditioning and stamina. So obviously, if you have a problem with your knee, maybe you're not running as much. You're not doing that as much in your strength and conditioning repertoire. So it'll be interesting to see how her conditioning is. And I'll be also interested to see just her overall, because I thought she was a star, and it'll be interesting to finally see her back in the octagon, and whether all that hope and promise and potential that she has hasn't gone by the wayside with this injury and layoff.
Yeah, Dana said that the injury that she received is the worst knee injury that he's ever seen. I just, like you said, I wonder how the recovery goes. Maybe she's a completely different fighter than what we saw in the Ultimate Fighter. We really have no idea. Which, just like the last 2 fights, Jim, that puts Melena in a very tricky situation, because are we going to see as active a fighter as we saw in the Ultimate Fighter, or is she going to be a little more methodical? Like, it's hard to prepare for somebody when you haven't seen them since November of 2013. I mean, she could have a bionic arm between now and then. I mean, when you're game planning, that's got to be tricky. But thought I'd show this just for the fans. This
And
is
that's when you met Juliana Pena.
that is correct.
So
She's
she's
not my
definitely
favorite women's bantamweight fighter. Just
but she is you are a fan.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to not be a fan.
I'm a fan of anybody whose photo I have on my phone. So therefore, you will not see a Brian Caraway photo. Hey, speaking of Brian Caraway, did you happen to see the Misha Tate interview from Brazil? Did you see the video floating around?
No, all I saw was people talking about her new hairstyle, which
So,
I was like, what? When did this become
like,
news?
they're doing an interview with Misha, and like, she's backed up against a wall. Like, she's backed up against this wall back here, and then like everyone's scrummed around her, and Caraway's like right here. Like, I don't know if you can see this Clorox thing.
So
But
he's up in the front, but they aren't talking to him.
well, they're talking to him, and like if you watch the interview, MMA Fighting's got like her face on the like boxed in, but like they've got it like boxed in, and then you can see that like they try to close in on Misha, but then it's awkward because it's like this, like she's answering questions like. So finally, somebody asked him a question, and he goes, "Yeah, we're hoping, we're pretty confident we're going to beat Jessica I, and we have a lot of tricks up our sleeve." What do you mean? What do you mean we? Are you fighting Ronda Rousey? I don't think so. Anyway, that guy's such a dork.
All right, let's get to the next fight of the evening, which is in the lightweight division, as Michael Chiesa will take on Mitch Clark. Looking at Chiesa, 4-2 in the UFC. His last fight was a loss to Joe Lazzone at the Fight Night in Ledyard, Connecticut, and 8 of his 11 career victories are by submission. Looking at Clark, 2-2 in the UFC. His last fight was a victory over Al Iaquinta at UFC 173, and 7 of his 11 career victories are by submission. Now, I expect this to be a grappling match. Both these men do not have a lot of stand-up skill, but just because it's a grappling match doesn't mean it won't be exciting, and I think it will. I think the transitions between these two, their skill, at submission and position and wrestling, I think this one will actually be fun to watch, Dave. I think these both guys are going to come right at each other, kind of clinch, and we're going to see who the better grappler is. I find it hard to believe this will be a standing and bang 'em fight. I find that very hard to believe. I just think we're going to find out maybe who's the superior grappler here, and I actually think it's going to be pretty exciting.
I've yawned more in this one episode than I have ever. I need to stop working out. That's ridiculous. Was Chiesa, was he ranked before he fought Lozon?
I don't think so.
This is a fight that I think the winner can become ranked. They're both kind of right on that cusp. Mitch Clark beat Al Iaquinta in his last fight, and Al is 15. And we're going to talk about him in a second. But, like you said, it's going to be a grappling fight. It doesn't mean it's going to be a boring one. Both of these guys are superior. They're both very good grapplers. And, yeah, it's probably not going to be a knockout, but we could see a slick submission in this one. But it's going to put both guys through the ringer. Do they have the cardio to go 15? Do they have the submission defense? All of that stuff's going to be put to the test in this one. And I think it's a very intriguing fight. And I think one of them might end up with a number next to their name if they look dominant in this performance.
The next fight of the evening, also in the lightweight division, and the aforementioned Al Iaquinta will be fighting in this one against Jorge Masvidal. Looking at Iaquinta, 6-2 in the UFC, and since that loss to Mitch Clark that we mentioned, he has been on a 3-fight winning streak. And his last fight was a very dominant performance over Joe Lazzone at UFC 183, and 6 of his 11 career victories are by knockout. His opponent, Jorge Masvidal, also on a 3-fight winning streak, 5-2 in the UFC. His last fight was a victory over James Krause at UFC 178, and 16 of his 28 career victories are by decision. Now, if you remember when our good friend Darren Cruikshank fought Masvidal has a pretty solid top game and can bust that out if he wants. More known as a technical and kind of methodical striker, but that could be something he could bust out against Iaquinta, a more grappling-based attack. Now, however this fight goes, we know Masvidal is a grinder. He's a very hard guy to finish, and almost all of his fights go 15 minutes. So if you're Al Iaquinta, knowing that, you got to be prepared to go 15 minutes and just be in for a tough fight against a very tough dude. Iaquinta has got some quick knockouts in his last couple fights. He hasn't had to go 15 minutes. It's been a while since he's had to go 3 rounds. Not saying he can't do that, but can he do it against Jorge Masvidal? You know, can he go that 15 minutes? You got to expect that. Will his stand-up be enough? Will his wrestling be enough? You know, he's going to be put to the test against Jorge Masvidal. I think this is going to be a close fight. Wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to a split decision. I'd say both guys are pretty evenly matched. I wouldn't say there's that much difference between the two. Maybe Masvidal a little better of a grappler, but I think this should be a good fight. And, you know, we talked about Iaquinta being on a streak, you know, maybe poised to get in the top 10. If you want to get in the top 10, you want to have title aspirations, you got to be guys like Jorge Masvidal. And this is kind of the, maybe not the final step, but if Iaquinta can beat Masvidal, you know, that opens up, you know, a lot of competition, and that kind of, to me, signals you've arrived as a potential top 10 lightweight.
Yeah, this is an interesting fight. You know, both of these guys, obviously, they want to move towards title contention. Like you said, Iaquinta is on a streak. You know, if you want to be in, you know, the co-main event spot, fighting guys that get you close to the title, the quickest way to do that is go out there and finish Masvidal real quick, fast, and in a hurry. You know, and look devastating, or look very devastating for the full 15 minutes. So, you know, I would tend to agree with you, Jim, that a split decision in this fight would not be out of the realm of possibility. These guys are very evenly matched, and I mean, I think this could co-main event a pay-per-view card, don't you think?
Yeah, you know, you may not know the names, but the skill is there between these two. It is clearly there, and I think Al Iaquinta, you know, with his relation with Chris Weidman, the Serra-Longo team, I think his last couple of knockouts, how great they've been against Lazone and Pearson, I think he's starting to get a little bit of a following here. I think people are starting to recognize Al Iaquinta here.
Yeah, and didn't he want to go see the senoritas and drink margaritas? Isn't that what he said in the press conference?
Something like that. I think that's what he said. All right, well, let's get to the main event here of UFC Fight Night 63. Chad Mendes against Ricardo Lamas. Looking at Lamas, 6-1 in the UFC. His last fight was a victory over Dennis Bermudez at UFC 180, and 7 of his 15 career victories are by submission. Looking at Chad, actually that's by decision, rather. 7 of 15 are by decision. Looking at Chad Mendes, 7-2 in the UFC. Both those losses, including his most recent loss, are to Jose Aldo, most recently at UFC 179, and 8 of his 16 career victories are by decision. Now, obviously, both these guys have a lot of decision victories. That is needless to say that they're not always boring, but that's just the way it goes. So, with that said, both of them being tough guys, I do have a feeling this one could at least go into the 4th round. Maybe not all 5, but definitely into the 4th round. Both are, I think, battle-tested individuals. It's going to be hard to submit. The difference to me will be the stand-up. I think both are tremendous wrestlers. I think both are very hard to take down. I find that one is not going to have that much of advantage over the other in wrestling. If it happens, I will be surprised, whether Lamas is able to take down Mendes at ease or Mendes is able to take down Lamas at ease. I would find that surprising either way. When it's left to standing, Ricardo's maybe a little more technical, slightly, but Chad definitely has more power. I think that's very apparent and I think very obvious. And how will Ricardo deal with that power when he gets hit? I mean, Mendes is a very strong individual, and I think since, you know, even now brief, that time with Dwayne Ludwig, I think has elevated his stand-up game, and I think that was on full display there for UFC 179. So Chad Mendes is becoming a tremendous stand-up fighter, and I think that's kind of the difference of the fight. Can Ricardo deal with the stand-up of Chad Mendes? And if he can't, that trying to take down Chad Mendes is not a great option. In fact, I'm not sure if anyone's done it. So that's kind of where I see the X factor being. How will Ricardo and his kind of more technical grinding stand up, deal with the maybe a little more flashy, a little more powerful Mendes? Now, I'm not saying Lamas can't win, but I'm saying that's to me whoever can kind of win in that area, and if Lamas can deal with that either positively or negatively, is how this fight is going to play out.
Yeah, this is another intriguing matchup. Obviously, the winner of this, I think, fights the winner of the featherweight title.
Possibly. You got Frankie Edgar probably should already have his.
Yeah, that's true. But, as much as I like Ricardo Lamas and, um, just everything that Ricardo Lamas does, I really like Mendes. Since Mendes lost that first time to Aldo, he's done nothing but steadily improve in every single fight that he's been in. Even when he lost to Aldo the second time, I still feel like he was much more improved than the last time that we had saw him. And knowing that he's close to having yet another shot, and especially the fact that if Conor were to win, I think either one of these guys runs through Conor if Conor were to win. I think Frankie does too. But I think that Mendes is going to be much more. We're going to see another Mendes take another step. It doesn't seem like every time we see Lamas that it's a new Lamas, that it's an improved Lamas. But with Mendes, I feel like every time it's improved, and he's still got that fire, and he wants another shot at that belt.
All right, with that said, Dave, let's get to some picks for UFC Fight Night 63, starting in the lightweight division with Dustin Poirier and Diego Ferreira. This one's tough for me. I think Ferreira has a very real chance to win, obviously moving up 10 pounds, but I think Dustin Poirier will be able to do something to get a victory. I'm excited for him at 155. I don't know if it's long-term the best move, but in terms of this fight, I think he can win. So give me the diamond in this one.
I'll do the diamond as well. Dustin Poirier.
All right. Our next fight is at featherweight, Clay Guida against Robbie Peralta. I haven't seen much, Dave, in terms of Robbie Peralta being able to stop the takedown when he's taking on better grapplers than him. So I don't know how he's going to stop Clay Guida. I really don't. So give me Clay Guida in this one.
Yeah, new and improved Clay Guida, new camp. I'm going to go with Clay Guida.
Juliana Pena against Mila Duvea. I probably said that wrong. Regardless, I know she's on a layoff coming off the injury, but I'm going Juliana Pena. I think that she'll be able to overcome this injury, and I think get a victory. I think maybe the pressure's on her, maybe a lot riding, but I think she'll be ready for it. So I'm going to take Pena.
Yep, I'm going to go with Pena as well. Be anxious to see her back in the cage, though. Be exciting.
Lightweight division, Michael Chiesa against Mitch Clark. I think this should be a fun grappling matchup between two really good submission guys. And I'm going to go with Michael Chiesa. I think he's fought a little better competition overall. I think he's handled a little better. And I think his length is one thing that's hard to deal with when you're grappling. And I think that really gives him advantages, and that's one of the reasons he is such a great grappler. So give me Michael Chiesa.
Yeah, I'm going to go with MC. Oh, wait. They're both MC.
So which one?
That is terrible.
Did you know that when you said that, or did you just realize that?
No, that was a joke. Now that I have to explain it to you, it's not that funny. No, I'm going to go with Chiesa as well.
All right, Al Iaquinta against Jorge Masvidal for the co-main event of the evening. I'll go Al Iaquinta. I think Masvidal has a lot. It's just, I don't know. The way Iaquinta has been beating guys recently and beating good competition, I think has been awfully impressive. So give me the Raging Al.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Senorita kissing, margarita sipping Al Iaquinta.
Featherweight division main event of the evening, Chad Mendes against Ricardo Lamas. Should be a good fight, a fun fight. Like you said, the winner potentially getting a shot at the title at the very least. Maybe one more fight either way. Lamas definitely has a chance to win, but like I said, I think that power and that striking diversity that Mendes has really developed, I think may be the difference in this one. So give me Money Mendes to win.
Yep, Money Mendes is who I'm picking. And, yeah, I just think, like I said, I just think he's more improved every time we see him, and we'll continue to, we'll continue to see him improve.
Any final thoughts, Dave?
No, tune in Fox Sports 1, 1 o'clock. Is that Eastern?
Yes.
1 o'clock Eastern.
12 Central, 11 Mountain, and 10 Pacific.
Yeah. So when you wake up, though, there's going to be fights on at...
Yeah, the prelim card starts at 11 a.m. Eastern.
Nice.
So, yeah, if you sleep in a little bit, catch fights as soon as you wake up.
Bam.
So, there you go. There's Dave's Saturday already planned out.
And then I have to go to work.
And then work. Not too shabby. All right, well, he is the Juice, Dave Sadler. As he said, he's pleading for Twitter followers at Vigilante Juice. So if you haven't followed him already, please do so. And then create a fake account and then follow him again. Dave doesn't care. He will take that. I am on Twitter at Jim Gramm, which Dave has alluded to. You probably have already followed me, so that's cool. No, but please follow me at Jim Gramm. And for the Juice over there, I'm Jim Gramm, and thanks for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks.